Matthew chapter 12, getting ready to wrap it up today. Verse 46. While Jesus was still talking to the crowd, which remember, he was talking, having this dialogue, if you can call it that, with Pharisees. They demand a sign. He talks about Jonah, and he talks about evil spirits and what, how that all works. Well, in verse 46 again, while Jesus was still talking to the crowd, his mother and brothers stood outside wanting to speak to him. Now, I don't want to be, I'm not in a mood to throw rocks, and I am not an anti-Catholic. There are some things that I think the Roman Catholic Church maybe got right. But one of the things I don't think they got right was Mary's perpetual virginity, that she remained immaculate all of her life. The scriptures don't tell us about her death, how long she lived. We know she lived beyond Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection because she was there for that. But then we don't hear anything about her in the book of Acts or in the other epistles of the New Testament. I think because there was nothing there, in a misguided effort, can I say it that way? I'm not trying to be critical here, but in a misguided effort to honor Mary, the mother of Jesus, I think they felt like their idea was as good as anybody's. Mary remained a virgin her entire life. Well, that's okay. This in verse 46 of Matthew chapter 12, I'm not sure how they can, well, I know what I've heard, but here, if his mother was Mary, he had brothers and sisters, would have been her sons and daughters. And this is not the only place in the gospel narrative that Jesus' brothers and sisters are identified and spoken of. And I'm certainly not an expert on the Mariology, which is what the Catholic Church in their doctrine have done to elevate, again, I'll say maybe with sincere motives, to elevate Jesus' mother, Mary, to the status of very equal. I mean, it's like Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Mary. And in spite of what very accurate translations offer here of this verse and others, their claim is that these were not the brothers and sisters, but the cousins of Jesus. This is very difficult to support. The Aramaic and the Greek from which the New Testament was translated don't stutter. The distinction between cousins and siblings is clear. So, well, I don't want to be mean-spirited, but that I have such a high regard for Mary and her faith. When I think about Mary, there are many reliable Bible scholars, New Testament gurus, who think Mary was 13, 14 years old, just barely across the age line for being able to conceive when the Holy Spirit came on her and she became pregnant with Jesus. So that when Gabriel came to her with the announcement that she was going to be the mother of God's Son, I think of her as a young teenage girl. She was, I don't know where the mark is between a teenage girl and a young woman, but she was no woman. But in her youth, she had tremendous maturity and, for me, unbelievable faith. Her word was, "Let it be unto me as you have said." In other words, okay, God, Father, I'm available. I am here. In fact, she said, I am your servant. There's so many things to be grateful and admire about Mary. One of the things I think, in my opinion, would have been admirable, or is admirable, is the fact that being the mother of the perfect Son of God, that had to be a really hard job. Now, some people would say, are you kidding? If he's a perfect Son of God, he never disobeyed, he never caused problems, because he did not sin. Well, yeah, but you can't forget, if you go back into the gospel story, when Jesus was about age 12, and the family went to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover. When they returned home, Mary and Joseph, assumed that Jesus was with family or friends for the trip back to Nazareth. But after the second day, no, he's not with us. He's not with them. We can't find him. Now, I admire Mary, but she was a human mom. And I believe that when that happened, she panicked. She had to have panicked. But I think she also trusted. They raced back to Jerusalem and spent 3 days trying to find Jesus. Ooh, you think that was 3 days of, well, God is in control. Isn't he good in this? No, I think there were 3 days of trust and panic, trust and fear. Just my opinion. Anyway, they found him where, if they had gone there first, imagine, they could have saved themselves a lot of anxiety. They found him in the temple, dialoguing with the scribes and the teachers of the law, and surprising them with his answers and insights. Okay, Mary. I like you, Mary. And then in verse 47, someone told him, your mother and brothers are standing outside wanting to speak to you. You think about this, and bear in mind that everywhere Jesus went, it was standing room only. Any house he went into instantly filled with people. They were like a can of sardines, shoulder to shoulder. There was no room to move around. Jesus was that popular and that much in demand. I think that Mary and Jesus' siblings wanted to get his attention, wanted to talk to him, but they couldn't even because the crowds were so huge. Well, somebody told him, I don't know who it would have been, one of the disciples, I would think so, but we don't have a clue to who. Your mother and brothers are standing outside wanting to speak to you. There's a lot more I would say about that, but I'm not going to because it's going to come up later. And he replied to this guy, who is my mother and who are my brothers? If I'd have been that guy, I'd have said, I think they're right here. And Jesus, instead of pointing at his mother and siblings, he points to his disciples and says, here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Whew. Now, I have this great temptation to overdo it on this point, but I'm going to do my best to not. One of my primary theories about the church, I would say it's one of the probably 2 or 3 fundamental beliefs about the church that I hold, is that the church is God's family. That we are all brothers and sisters by virtue of our adoption into God's family at the cost of Jesus' blood. He made us his brothers and sisters. And God treats his family, the church, as family. Now, a lot of people have a whole lot of other ways of looking at what the church is like. A lot of similes, a lot of metaphors. One which comes close but it's off the mark still, is that the church is like a football team. You got the quarterback, Jesus, okay? You've got the running backs and the skill positions, tight ends, wide ends. That would be the disciples, the apostles. And then you've got the down linemen, just the grunts, right? And that's just the normal church member. Oh, no, not really. Those are the church people that kind of got somehow to take a step up. Where the church is, it's out in the grandstands watching all this happen. That's not the church. It's not a governmental, it's not a republic democracy where you've got Jesus is the president, God is the president, Jesus is the vice president. No, the church is a family. Here's the problem that I think has been true throughout history, but especially in the last 50 years. There are so few healthy, functioning families that people have grown up in. Hardly anybody knows what a healthy family is like. Well, in my opinion, this did not take God by surprise. And I think one of the reasons that he ordained the church to be his family is to teach us how a healthy family relates to itself. This is difficult. There's too many times local congregations within this family of God are all wrapped up in making sure we do the right things. And that's part of it. But have you ever been around a family where the kids did all the right things, but there was just virtually no love? It can become that unless grace is the empowerment of a family, that it produces loving, obedience. And this is true of the church. I could go on for about 45 minutes, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stop right here. See you next time on So Care with Stevie.